Hello, and welcome to another episode of Power On Podcast 00Status. There we go. I can talk. I can do it. My name is Taylor. I'm going to go to 553. Brian Bircham. All those other fun, happy handles, whatnot.
Love handles.
Yes, love handles as well. Hey, now, to be fair, there's really no excuse at this point. I've lost about 30 pounds this year because I gained about 50.
Oh, gee.
Well, because I think I might have told you this. I hurt my leg.
Yeah.
And stuff. And I packed on a whole bunch of pounds and thankfully didn't lose my leg. So, anywho, welcome to another episode of Power On Podcast 00Status. All that fun jazz. Co-host, cohort, co-conspirator, collaborator, coconut for I don't know. I've lost my code.
They're gonna communist.
Sushi B, how does it go?
It's going well, actually. Just before we kick this off, as I said, I'm really looking forward to this particular podcast today for this film. So I was just going to ask you, how's the Pimpmobile hanging in your garage? How's it holding up? I can't believe the word Pimpmobile was actually used in this movie.
That was certainly something.
Oh,
yeah.
And by a reoccurring character.
Right. And it's only on like one side too.
Yeah.
Or because I don't think
it only comes up once that I recall.
Yeah. It's just really weird to be like
in name, at least in name. Maybe there's another person that implies it at some point, but it's only spoken that I recall one time.
Certainly hits differently than Batmobile. But,
yes, it does.
But yeah, so I know on the last one there, you were excited to see this again.
It was.
I'm gonna let you start off.
Okay.
Things well because you were like, oh yeah, this is one of those ones that I really enjoyed when I was younger and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Revisiting it, how did that?
It's been, I couldn't tell you exactly how long, but it's been a long time since I've watched pretty much most of these movies. But this is one, as I said before, I had a fondness for it for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because it's one of the first I'd seen or what have you. I mean, there's a few quite well-known scenes in here, especially the running on the alligators scene is pretty well known and was actually done by a stunt person, which is
5 times
crazy. Yeah, and they almost got caught. I think on the 4th, I think it was.
Yeah, I think
something like that. They almost fell in and actually got chewed up.
I think on the 3rd one, it was just by the 3rd and 4th one, they're like, okay, we'll stop. And then they came back like a week or 2 later to do it. Mm-hmm. And then he nailed it on that 5th one. But yeah, there was one where he just fell in because the alligators are like, okay, this jackass is running across us again. Gays, get ready.
Okay. On 3, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy stunt. And, as you watch the movie, of course, you're in disbelief that this actually took place. It just looks so silly. But it's pretty crazy to think that somebody actually pulled that off. So, but yeah, honestly, I don't think my tune has changed. I'll come right out. I still like this movie as for all of its pitfalls and all of the reasons you probably shouldn't like it. It makes me laugh. I like the characters. We'll get into all this stuff, but just a short preview. I still like this movie.
Okay. All right. To be honest, I could not tell you when I had last seen this movie. Yeah.
You never watched these movies as a kid in order, I'm assuming. I'm assuming like me, they'd be on TV, you'd see them whatever, right? That just you caught them all in different points in time, I
It's
suppose.
it's very fractured
Okay.
here and there. Like for whatever reason, and truth be told, I don't think I really watched them much until after GoldenEye, because GoldenEye
Okay.
was kind of that flashpoint for me,
Mhm.
mainly because of the game. Because I'm like, oh, this game's pretty
Sure.
awesome, and so, and I think the first one I would have seen wasn't really even GoldenEye. It was Tomorrow Never Dies. The first
Okay.
one I actually was like, okay, focusing on what's going on,
Right.
kind of thing. So, um, like it's fractured memories at this point. Like I don't, because we didn't. Cause truthfully be told, I didn't really watch a lot of TV as a kid. The
Yeah.
only thing I could really think of is like baseball coming on Sundays,
Okay.
and being like, okay, it's baseball. I go outside and
Billy
play.
Bob's hunting and fishing.
Something like that,
Just
you know, that or
Sunday always had
uh,
that same kind of
uh, what
repertoire of shows, right?
Bob Ross, I think, was on Sundays. So I remember watching
Yeah,
that on
some and
PBS.
always some sort of home repair and construct. There was always the same kind of shows on a Sunday.
That or what was that? There's a Bob Vila. Was that
Yeah,
no? But
This
that's not
Old
who I'm
House or
thinking of.
something like that.
Yeah,
I think that's still going.
maybe I know there was this quiz show that was called like In the Know, I think, and it was for like high school students. Would have like team Jeopardy sort of thing go
Oh,
on, so
okay.
like a teams of four, if I
Oh, that
remember
sounds pretty
correctly.
fun.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. It's like, oh, so, but yeah, so this one in particular, I honestly did not really remember
Mhm.
much. The only things I could really like vaguely remember is the ending,
Okay.
and
It's a pretty memorable
yeah,
yeah.
and that character, and
Yep.
um the gator scene was another one. I was like,
Hmm.
and then when I seen it, I was like, oh yeah, right, this one, yeah, this is where this was from.
Right.
Um, and then, um, and that's really all that's sticking out in my head outside of it. I don't know if you know this or not. Maybe I should have probably looked this up before. Um, Jane Seymour,
Yep.
medicine Dr. Quinn, medicine woman. Is that
That's
the same
correct.
person? Okay, all right. That's see, I
She's
remember her.
also in the wedding crashers.
Is she?
She is. She's married to Christopher Walken, actually. And there's
It
the scene
all
where
comes
Owen
back to
Wilson,
walking.
yeah, it always come back to Walken. Which is weird actually. No, they're both Bond alumni. Now I think about that. They're in that super weird scene where oh, what's his name? Owen Wilson. She kind of tries to seduce him for some reason,
Uh-huh.
but not really. And then
See, I haven't
she yeah, it's yeah, it
I
won't
haven't
make
seen the
any sense
movie
to you, but
since.
basically she pulls him into that room and then she says
No,
something like,
I've
take off
seen
my
it. I just
shirt.
haven't seen it since
Remember
it
she
was
says
out in
something like,
theaters.
take off my shirt or something like that. And then
Uh
he goes to do it and she's like, you pervert, and then like says something and walks away. She's trying to set him up for something. But
uh-huh.
I haven't seen it in a long time either, so I can't remember what it is. But
Huh.
anyways, yeah, just Christopher
Okay.
Walken being Christopher Walken, in that
Mm.
movie kind of thing. So,
Yeah,
but
like I
yes,
said,
it is.
it's
But that's Jane
yeah.
Seymour. Yeah, she is in
Okay.
Dr. Quinn.
So yeah, I completely forgot that she was in this movie. So
Super
I
young
was
in this though, right? Like she
right,
looks
just
so young.
really, and I was just like,
She's
oh
stunning. She's a stunning
yeah,
woman. Still
but
is, honestly. Like
like
here today,
I was
she looks like she's barely aged.
I was just yeah, because when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh hey, Dr. Quinn,
Yep.
like because I remember my mom watching that when I was a
and
kid.
then
So
and you're like, whoa, Dr. Quinn.
I was like, whoa,
Because when she's introduced, she's like in a nightgown that's barely covering, and
right. She actually has some really cool costume,
she
or
does have some cool costumes. Yeah.
some yeah.
There's some pretty elaborate costumes for her, and just I like a lot of the costumes in the whole movie is done pretty well.
Probably about the worst thing is at the end with the henchmen looking like they just stepped off of a Target sales floor with the jeans and the red shirt, but beyond that,
yeah.
so
Whisper.
but oh, poor Whisper.
Oh, poor
But
Whisper.
but yeah, so it was very fresh to watch this, and I watched a couple different documentaries on it. One was kind of about more talking about trying to be this, because this is the first movie with Roger Moore, and truthfully, I can see the appeal. Like, and they make a point of it in the documentary. It was like, Connery might be just as liable to, lean in for a kiss, but also like gut punch a woman. I'm like, oof. I don't know.
Not a very flattering.
Yeah. That's you really should kind of call that sort of behavior a bit out there.
Yeah, bring that one down a notch.
Right, where Moore is it's much more disarming, and Moore even said that when he was reading one of the books that there was a point which mentioned about how Bond killed, but he didn't like it. And that really stuck with him. And so that's why he was a bit more quippy. It's a bit more. It's when you see him at this point as much younger, it works a lot better than it does in View to a Kill.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, like I can get behind this a lot better, or a lot more. So
already horror.
I know, right?
Yeah, no, I could see that. I definitely agree. I don't know what his age is at this point, but he's obviously quite a bit younger. What was the show he was on? The Saint? He was just coming off of The Saint, which was
and that's what
sort of similar character.
Right, and they were kind of like, okay, don't do the eyebrow thing, because I guess that was there was something about that where, because
that was part of his shtick.
That was part of his shtick. So just
like The Rock with the eyebrow,
right?
People's eyebrow. Or whatever it's called.
I don't think it's called the People's Eyebrow.
I don't think it's called People's Eyebrow either.
So, but yeah. Where do you want to start with this film?
I think we got to start with that opening theme song. I think that
okay.
And the reason being, like this, as I was talking to you before we jumped into this, this is sort of the turning point for the theme songs, where a lot more experimental effort was kind of put into the songs, I feel.
Yeah, it certainly was.
Maybe Diamonds Are Forever, you could kind of argue as well, I suppose. But this one really starts to take it into a new direction of, you could do a rock sort of, I don't know, like a Queen rock opera type song to some degree. This song, it's kind of got some of that classical music level in it, but then it's got some, it's boisterous. It's really kind of in your face.
Yeah. I don't like this song for Bond.
Really?
I like the song, but I hate this song when it comes to for this movie. I don't know what it is. It just doesn't sit well with me.
Okay. So I'll tweak that a little bit. So I like the song for the credits at the beginning and the opening sequence or whatever. Not sequence, sorry. I always misflub this. Sort of the
opening credits.
Thank you, the opening credits. I don't like the use of it throughout the movie.
It's really jarring.
It doesn't fit the flow of the film at all. It's not like what was the ones we were just talking about? Like A View to a Kill, right? I remember that one. We're saying, there's a melodic version of it that fits really well.
Right.
This song does not fit at all. It's
really like Stinger, kind of like pointed and just a little too jarring.
It's such a choppy song, I guess. Like it sort of start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. So it doesn't fit. But for that opening credits, I love just like how it focuses in on that woman's face and she opens her eyes wide and you're like, whoa, like what's going on here?
Right. And then it kind of flashes to the skull.
And I love that flaming skull image, which is used in the end credits as well. I think it's cool. I think the song fits. It's something different.
Yeah. I don't know. I just, it's that choppiness, the stop and go nature of the song. Like I said, I don't mind the song, but I like, and that's not to say, can't other bands and whatnot can't do the same thing, obviously. But like, I like Queen and that kind of very operatic sort of thing. And it's just, it feels like it dips its toe into it. And then it's like, okay, that was good. And then it comes back to it. It's like, oh, okay, I'm good. And it's like, just go full ham with it. Just get the whole pig. Just go with it. And it doesn't. Because it's like when there's that da-da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. I like that little portion, but then it just like cuts it off at the knees, and you're like, oh, okay. I guess. And then, it builds back to it, but it's too quickly over. And I'm like, okay, all right. But yeah, like I know that's probably like one of the few people, obviously, because I think it won awards for.
I think it was nominated for Academy. I don't know if it ended up
Okay.
winning, but
At least nominated. Yeah, I thought it was at least on the pedestal there.
I do think a lot of people recognize this as a really strong theme song. I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but I do think it's a pretty memorable theme song. And people who don't even know James Bond might be able to associate this with the movie.
Maybe now, yeah,
or the
might not. Maybe
franchise.
not so much as now. It's
Not
probably been
maybe
enough,
not as much because it's a lot of time has passed, but
right? But at least
it
probably
kind
up
of
until the
transcended.
'90s or so.
Yeah, maybe, and it kind of was able to transcend just being a Bond theme to some degree, from what I
Right.
understand. I think You Only Live Twice kind of did as well, but not to the degree of this.
Yeah, but that one, I think this is maybe pointing to how I feel about it, where I just don't think it fits for Bond. Whereas You Only Live Twice, you could hear that be
Yeah.
It's kind of like rubbing shoulders there a bit better, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but I don't know, personally, I like it. I like that opening credit sequence. It's not too crazy, but it still kind of follows a little bit of the traditional way that the first 7 movies by that point. Yeah, 7 movies at that point would have kind of flowed through it, but it still kind of added a new wrinkle with the backdrops and stuff. But just I don't know, that flaming skull, when the music just like is about to power into it and then it changes. I was like, whoa! I think first time I ever saw that, it was just like, wow, that's really cool.
I mean, that's fair.
You know what I like too, actually, just before that, and it's a bit weird, but Roger Moore isn't really introduced as Bond in this movie. The first opening sequence is just those 3 people being executed. And it adds some intrigue though right away to the film. You're like, what just happened? Like, what's going on? And it doesn't really allude much to it after the fact. It's just kind of a one-off, like, oh yeah, 3 guys got killed.
Right.
Killed. But it's something different. And the next thing, you don't get this sort of what we got with Lazenby, right? Where it comes into frame, it's all
this didn't happen to the other guy.
Yeah, and it's all silhouette, and then we get the fourth wall break, which I still think I thought was pretty clever. I thought that was pretty neat. But we don't really get that with Roger Moore. It's just picking right up, right. It's like he was there all along. Right? You don't really get this sort of.
I do like that they held it until after the opening credits. It was kind of a nice, just give a bit of a breathing room for it instead of, he's in the barrel sequence.
He is, but
right. But I mean, okay, it's
I don't
just,
count that. Like,
right. It's just kind of like, okay, you at least see it, and then we'll come back to that. Put a pin in your hat for a moment on that.
But has any other Bond introduced? Or sorry, I guess not introduced. They're all introduced in some way, and he kind of isn't. He's the only one that isn't introduced in this first film. Like Dalton's got a really good one. I remember watching that one recently. It's like, oh, that's a really cool way to introduce Bond. And Connery is like the most iconic.
I can't remember Golden Eyes.
Is when he's in the bathroom and he comes upside down, and he says something to the guy in the toilet. I forget what he says now, but we'll get to that film obviously. But that's when he comes upside down. And then they had all of those promos things. Remember, it's like, were you expecting somebody else? Was like his catchphrays.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, you have to watch it when we get to GoldenEye. You have to watch that little quick preview or that movie trailer, whatever it was. Anyways, he isn't really introduced, really, which is an interesting choice, honestly.
Well, I think they kind of had to. Like, Connery's no longer in the picture. They were worried in regard to, Moore was their first pick to begin with, and then they went Connery, and then they're like, okay, well, Connery kind of made it his own. Now we're shifting gears back over to Moore, and how will people react? So it might have been a bit more of a conscious decision to be like, let's not be too, you'll see it with how he acts. He's a different guy.
Yep, for sure is he. But he seems pretty comfortable, honestly. Like you would think he might feel a little more uptight about taking on the role. And so soon after Connery, since Connery had left and came back and then left again, So it wasn't just this smooth transition. You had Connery, then you had Lazenby, who didn't, obviously didn't really like his experience, so he left, and then they got Connery back, and then Connery left again, and now so a lot of flip flopping before you get to him.
Right. Got very tumultuous.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought that I like that whole part to get to the point. It is weird that Q's not in here to give any of his devices or anything. I thought
Yeah,
that
they
was
just
kind of
well,
like,
and this is something I kind of
get
thought
out of bed and there you go.
I was kind of wondering if maybe this might be a similar trajectory that may end up happening now that the Craig arc has come to pass.
Yeah,
is that you had this more of very stern demeanor and outlook and all that sort of stuff. If it doesn't go maybe not silly, but a little bit more quippy, a little bit more
lighthearted,
maybe lighthearted, but also maybe somebody who's also a bit more gadget oriented, because that was something I do recall with Moore's Bond always seemed to be a bit more in the know when it came to gadgets and just kind of like scientific stuff, which I actually really appreciate, because it's not just a complete stooge who was like, oh yes, karate chop, judo chop. right. It makes him come off like he does his research and not just whatever. And at times it can get a little out of hand.
I remember we watched one and we both drew that conclusion, was that how come he knows this much, and like, does he really need any help? So
right
the point where, and especially as they get deeper into the franchise with him, it starts to get more to that point of this is just, it almost feels like it's a vanity project to some degree.
Right. But at least at this point, it's more like, oh, he's already stopped by Q Branch, and he's at least keeping up to date with the stuff. So you're like, okay, all right, cool, great. And it's I like the laser watch from GoldenEye. Good old aforementioned GoldenEye, especially in that game. But it has a super magnet to it.
This is a cool watch. This is one of the coolest watches.
And then it also has a little tiny saw blade,
a buzz saw.
Yeah, so
I think that's cool. Yeah, no, it's a good point. The Moore movies certainly utilize a lot of gadgets and weren't afraid to use the gadgets, and it's cool. And they're not sort of overused in this. They have a function. It's funny, they don't really, you get introduced pretty early on about these gadgets and they don't really get used. One gets used a couple of times, and that's the magnet. But then the other stuff doesn't really get used till the very end, pretty much, right? So it's kind of an interesting choice to stretch it out so far. And I was always wondering if the Q actor, was it Desmond Leland?
There was something
unavailable or something.
If I remember correctly, it was something where he was unavailable, and I don't remember what it was for, because there were some issues with filming and everything.
Okay.
Just having troubles doing it down in New Orleans. They came up with like let's have a boat chase scene after visiting New Orleans and stuff, because they're like, we can't just be down here with the crew for a 5-minute scene. So they're like, oh, boat chase. I want to say that there might have been some prior engagement or something that had kept him from being able to be in this movie.
Okay, fair enough.
So like something similar happened with Moneypenny. Like she had wanted a raise, and they were kind of harumphing about doing it. But then they eventually, like, something, either they gave in or whatever, or they didn't really give in as much. But then that scene where she's in right at the beginning, right? It took 2 days, so she got paid extra for it anyways.
Oh, nice.
So she's like, okay, sure, whatever. So
actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the magnet watch, or like the magnetism on the watch, is introduced in a pretty ridiculous way. Now I'm thinking about it.
Right.
It's like, you can just open a sliding door.
But it's magic.
And so the unzipping of the dress thing, okay, I kind of get that. It's like, okay, I see why you would do that or whatever, to kind of show off the thing and whatever. I guess seemingly this is romantic, not to me, but okay,
Pure magnetism.
sure. But just the actual sliding of the door is just totally ridiculous. It's just so unnecessary. But yeah, good gadgets in this. I forgot that Guy Hamilton is the director here, and he's pretty veteran Bond director. This is not his first rodeo, if you will. He's directed some, and he's directed a very popular movie in Goldfinger, and had done Diamonds Are Forever, which is interesting, just before this. And then he does the follow up to this too. But I found that this whole movie, just for me, I liked the flow of the movie. And I also like the scope, that it's not this huge world-ending event or what have you. I know some people will kind of scoff at this maybe not being enough of a reason to be on this mission or what have you. But I like that it's a bit smaller scope.
It's just simple heroin smuggling.
Yeah, it's just a simple heroin smuggling. It only affect the U.S. So.
Here's the thing though, is that like, I gotta like work it through my brain. Kananga. There we go. Kananga. He like his plan is a pretty like damning plan.
Yeah.
To just we're gonna unload a whole bunch of heroin for we're gonna basically do Opium War 2 US Boogaloo without any sort of
British Jean-Claude Van Damme dancing in the background. Yes, I think he was only in the first one.
But that's a pretty like, it's not like, oh, I've got the nuclear bomb or anything. No, it's a pretty insidious, but like that's what makes him cool. Like it does get a lot of bad rap for not being space lasers or
nuclear bombs
and that
all the
sort
stuff
of thing
that preceded this was quite large in scope. World-ending events, things like
or at least like Flashpoint, where this is a much more
it's a street level, baby.
It's a slow burn. It's a slow he's in for the long haul.
That he is.
So but
I like that it's not such a massive scope. It's very straightforward, easy to understand. People, it's easy for people to think, oh yeah, drugs are bad. It's easy to understand what the scope of this is, and I'll get into them later, but I like all the filler characters in this. I really like the little bits and pieces that they contribute to the film. But yeah, it's a pretty simple, straightforward plot and plan here. It's funny how those we were just talking about the 3 agents that get killed earlier. That's just kind of like pushed off to the side. Like it makes it seem like it's going to be this, like we said, world-altering event or something, holding the world at ransom by going after those agents, and that's just kind of totally pushed off. Like, go investigate what's going on with them. Okay. And that's kind of it. Then so the next thing you know, he's going to New York and he's in Harlem.
Right. Well, and this is where we've kind of mentioned it before. It's the way that it comes across is that everybody already knows who's in the know, knows who Bond is.
Right.
So there's no point in making up some sort of ridiculous masquerade. And he's just gonna poke his nose in there. And if you take a swing, other people are going to know.
Right.
And I think what makes this a lot more interesting is that Mr. Big has a whole, like, they have their own neat little gadgets, their own, like, they're very professional. It isn't just all of a sudden we got the one guy. No, there's a whole network. And they really demonstrate that well. And I liked, like, that's more of an aspect that should be visited and kind of shown, I think. Is this sort of, like they're not just, it's not just a couple of goons and evil big bad boss there. No, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Like they're gonna.
Yeah, it's from the taxi driver, right? Like it's, and I, again, going back to the characters, I feel they do have a purpose. They're not just complete throwaways. Like you can, that they've got a little slot within that sort of hierarchy, and they all have some bit to play in the movie. Whereas so many times we get, okay, that's a really cool hench person, but they're discarded right away. Kind of, we talked about in Skyfall. Not what's that guy's name? Not Pierre. What was his name?
Patrice.
Thank you, Patrice. Like he has a function, but it feels so throwaway. It's rushed. It doesn't feel like we talked about it being the stepping stone. Whereas these are just strictly henchmen, and they all have a function, and they all have a little, their little twerk, geez, they're little, thank you.
They're twerking.
Yeah, they're twerking. Well, I don't know if Whisper can twerk, but I know who can twerk though. Baron Samedi, he can twerk.
Jeffrey Holder is a dancer, or I think he might have passed away. Yeah,
I think he's passed away, but they all have like their little quirk, right? They have something about them that's memorable, and but they don't sort of overstep each other. There's one that kind of does sort of have a bit more of a, I don't know, gravitas to them, or what have you, and a bit more mystique. But we're kind of forgetting one of the big elements of this, and that's that voodoo sort of backdrop or element that's present in this film,
right? That
and sprinkled all over.
Tarot card reading,
yeah, sort of that magic piece.
And this is something I like, and I wish they would revisit, is this bit more. Yeah, there's always this technical side and the super science and all this sort of stuff. Sometimes it is interesting to have that mystique of kind of otherworldliness, like with Baron Samedi's character in particular. It's really weird because he's sprinkled in throughout, but there's not a lot of interaction that's going on with him and Bond. He's playing the flute at one point in
It'll be a beautiful morning, sir. Or was it called, good morning, boss?
Yeah, right.
He's got such a distinct voice and laugh.
And he's in the scene,
sword fight.
Well, no, I was going to say like in this brief sword fight, and it's which is kind of like
it's a little too brief.
It's a little too brief. You can see where it's like, oh yeah, this movie could have benefited just a couple more minutes, especially right there at the end. But or for sure, that last little interaction.
Yep.
Like just that kind of weirdness, because it's like, oh, you shoot him, but it's actually just a clay figure, right. And then at the very end, there he is sitting on at the front of the train laughing, and you're like, oh, cool, can't wait to see him again.
Yeah, that bit of movie magic when he gets his chunk of his head shot off,
that was like really good.
Yeah, it was like I couldn't tell, was it robotics, was it just makeup, was it some other movie magic? I couldn't tell if that was, I assumed that was still the actor.
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain.
Looked cool though.
I was just like, oh wow, that's really impressive.
Yeah, it looked really cool. But I agree. I like that mystique. It blurs the line of what you can believe and what you can't believe. And I agree. If I would love to see something of that nature in a new Bond movie, it doesn't have to be the voodoo element, but something that Bond and his team around him question is this the reality, or is this is this someone pulling the curtain behind, and oh, there's the Wizard of Oz, right? Is this all imagination? It is too bad they've never gone back to this element that I can recall.
And from what I recall, like the 70s, I'm trying to remember some of like the Clint Eastwood westerns and stuff. Might have been in the 80s, but they visit this sort of element as well.
Yeah, is it High Plains Drifter?
High Plains Drifter is one of them, and then there's another one that's pretty much the High Plains Drifter with same sort of idea, but it's a lot. I'm trying to remember. Like one of them does a better job at really kind of masking it in the sense of, yeah, maybe, and the other one is a bit more overtly. There's much less of a wink and a nod. It's a bit more open that it's like, yeah, it's just a harbinger of death.
I think High Plains Drifter is the one where you go through the whole movie and wondering what is going on. Why is he such a jerk the whole movie? And then it gets to the end and you're kind of, oh, I think I've got this now. I went on a big Eastwood trip the last year. I watched Unforgiven. I watched Outlaw Josie Whale. Like I watched quite a few of them.
Dying ain't much of a living, boy.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to visit some of the ones I hadn't seen, and I even went to some of the other ones I'd never watched, like Magnificent Seven and stuff. Yeah, I went on, and then I had to do Seven Samurai because I watched Magnificent Seven and Yo Jumbo because I watched Fistful of Dollars. So I kind of started branching out into all these different. But back to Bond, yeah, like it's really unfortunate that they've never considered this element, and maybe they haven't for a reason based on what I know we're going to get into, and this is sort of that blaxploitation part of this movie. I don't know if this is part of the reason why they don't want to go back to that sort of mystique. I wouldn't think that would be, but this movie just doesn't feel like a Bond movie in a lot of areas.
Well, and it's not even blaxploitation. Like they purposely pushed it in that, like in the how they put it in the documentaries and stuff, is that they wanted it, to them it felt a bit more avant-garde to have black villains, because Black Panthers had been a lot more prominent in political scene, and they were pushing into it a bit more with that, and they wanted to kind of be like, well, you know Bond is going to win, but he's going to win because he's Bond.
And not because of
right. The villain's going to lose, and it's not because he's black. It's no, he's a villain. And that's the route they wanted to go. And it feels a bit more blaxploitation, I think, because it doesn't really do a good job of having this sort of element come up in other movies so much.
I'm just thinking more of the atmosphere of when they're on the street. It's the lingo. It's not so much the characters themselves, but just more the scenarios in the sense they've developed.
Like they kind of visit it and then they never come back to it, kind of thing. And
Kananga is one of my favorite villains. He's so well spoken. He's believable. He's got that just calm presence, but he can be menacing. Well, I think he's a great villain.
When you first see him, because Kananga and Mr. Big are the same person, and I don't think you really realize it at first.
No.
And so that's kind of the thing that Bond is trying to figure out, what's the connection between these two and stuff.
Right.
And when you see Mr. Big, like when Bond sees him for the first time, he looks really weird, because you get this very quick, like, something's off with this guy.
Yeah.
And then you see him again, and
but he has one of the best lines when he comes into that room. Names it for tombstones, baby. Take this honky out back and waste him, or whatever he says.
That's what he says. Yeah, names are for tombstones. I like that. It's like,
names are tombstones, baby.
But when he tears that latex mask off, and it's just this, and I'm like, oh, that's just pretty. Yeah, he's. This is a cool way to show that there's. The clock may be working, but it's spinning a little too fast or something. Something's off.
Right. And maybe it's almost, for this character, he knows he has to act up so much as the Mr. Big persona, because when he's himself as Kananga, as I said, he's so well spoken. He can carry himself in a room. He's at that UN.
Yeah, he's a diplomat,
right?
so he's got this kind of charisma.
Yeah. So when he's Mr. Big, and then he's got to go on that far end of the street lingo and what have you, right? And sort of the menace and the presence, that it's a different kind of presence. But I too, I like that when he pulls off the facial makeup, and you're right, when you see him sitting in the chair and you're like, what is up with this guy's face and stuff? Like, you can tell something is weird. It doesn't look like a typical, like the skin tone looks just a little bit off. Like you can almost tell it's like a makeup. Yeah, like you can almost like it is a makeup on his face, but you're like, why is his skin tone look like, is it? And you're kind of almost second guessing yourself. Is that really what the actor looks like? It's just something doesn't seem right. It does seem off. And then you get the reveal and you're like, oh, okay, that makes total sense now.
But yeah, no. Plus the more grounded, simple heroin smuggling is I don't know, I guess it adds a much more stronger tinge of, for lack of a better way to phrase it, realism to him that keeps him grounded in a nice way. I think maybe because of the director and stuff, has some similar feels to it as Goldfinger in certain ways to me. Just because of you're on that estate, or Bond's on that estate and stuff, and there's a bit more of a groundedness outside of the whole Fort Knox bit. But
but the plan, we'll get into Goldfinger at some point, but yeah, that plan's still somewhat within reason. Yeah, the execution's a little bit over the top, but
right,
the plan of radioactive gold, so okay, it was kind of smart. It's kind of interesting. Yeah, I think I agree with that too. And he's such a magnetic presence on screen, right? Like when I'm watching him, I really like his sort of back and forth with Roger Moore, who's, again, he's trying to antagonize him a lot of the time, right? When what does he say? Like, what does he say when he's like, quite a reveal or something like that? When he takes off I can't remember the exact quote he says, but he's constantly trying to antagonize him. And Kananga doesn't buy into it at all. He's still like calm. I think the only time he raises his voice is when he
doesn't answer the question.
Well, and also when he backhands Solitaire.
Right.
Otherwise, he doesn't really raise his voice. He's just really calm in all of these scenarios and situations. Even like Bond is coming, he's just like, yeah, send the guys out to kill him. Like, he's not yelling in the phone or like, go kill him or whatever. It's just,
it's not, it's a calm, but it's not a almost robotic, like Dr. No sort of.
No.
Kind of very almost alien-esque. Like...
Right. But that works for the Dr. No character. Because I think he's supposed to be portrayed as being such a cold and callous and kind of, very distant. But this character is not. You're right. There's a level of like passion in the speech and everything that he's doing. It's not just going through the paces, right? And so, I don't know if we can say enough about the presence he brings and so forth. Just trying to, I guess we're bouncing around a little bit here, but just from the rest of the plot piece, there's a lot of chasing in this movie. Boat chase, train chase, bus chase, car chase.
Planes, trains,
I don't think there's a running chase, is there? Yeah, there's a running chase when they're getting shot at by the helicopter chase. It's like everything, every kind of chase you can think of. Shark chase.
That was just footage from Thunderball that they're like, oh, hey.
No, it wasn't. There clearly wasn't plexiglass in there.
Oh, right.
Pretty similar scheme though, for sure. But there's a lot of chasing going on in this movie.
Yeah, like that boat chase is interspliced with the purposely obnoxious
JW
Pepper. And Boy Shucks Howdy is
okay. I stand corrected. There probably is one character in this movie I don't like.
Well, and he's purposely made that way.
I know he is,
but he's there to take the piss out of people being racist pieces of shit.
I know.
So, it's a joke that gets played too long though. Like it's, it has that funny bit where it's like, that's my brother-in-law and stuff, and goes. It's one of Kananga's henchmen goes by on a boat, and the other guys are like, you sure that's your brother-in-law? He's like, yeah, and you're like, okay, that's a pretty funny bit. And then they keep on going with it. You're like,
and he gets the guy at gunpoint, and right? When he
right.
like gets the one henchman on gunpoint
Well,
or
that's
whatever, and
beforehand. That's beforehand.
oh yeah, when he's giving him the shakedown.
Right. Well, that's the
You're like,
setup of
that's probably a
showing.
little too close to home.
Well, but it was purpose. Yeah, it was
I know,
purposely
but
showing
still,
that. So like I don't I don't mind that, particularly because it's not graphic and it is showing
no,
that sort of heinous kind of attitude
right.
and approach to that sort of position.
Mhm.
And the it's just when the joke hits that point, it's like afterwards it's the only other joke that kind of comes of it is when he's says to Bond directly, it's like, what kind of doomsday machine are you, boy? And you're like, okay, that's kind of ridiculous, but and then they have to like pull him away, like there's something wrong with him. Like, all right, come here, JW, come here. We're going to explain this in simple, maybe up to 2 or 3 syllable words. But
I can't believe this is a reoccurring character
I
too.
can't. I am baffled that people are like, yes, I responded well to that. Outside of
In no way, in no logical way, would this guy end up in Thailand. Like we'll get to that, but like there's no. I'm sorry. Like I won't get into all the reasons why, but yeah, anyways, I'm not a big fan of this character. I think there's way more interesting characters in this movie that
I think he's just showing the sex tourism that Thailand is notorious for. That
I didn't really even get that out of that character. That boat drives by and Golden Gun splashes and he's like, dang old boys, and he says something ridiculous.
something ridiculous.
Yeah, anyways.
It's just there because you remember it from the you remember from the
Shucks out, he was
previous
in the
film.
last film, so we brought him back. But
Oh boy.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Moving on.
But it's a chase scene that, like, that boat chase scene is a long one, and
It
it
is.
isn't until after the joke hits that you're kind of, I don't know, it's kind of like, this is sort of, and I was like, okay, it's a little bit better once you get through about halfway through it. It's like, okay, this is a little bit more tolerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does have,
it's a little slow for sure.
yeah,
It picks
it
up.
does have the longest, at least at one point, had the longest boat jump
Okay.
for world record. That one, it lasted for a very long time, but
Cool.
it was like it was pretty. So when that and what they had to do for those jumps was to angle up the engine.
Mhm.
So when they're hitting those ramps, they have to like hit the ramp and immediately angle up the engine so it doesn't
smash on it.
smash onto the ramp and stuff like that. Like, that's pretty neat maneuvering.
That's one thing that the Roger Moore movies is something we probably haven't really struck a chord with. Is there's a lot of very impressive vehicle stunts and like we'll get that one in Golden Gun, which is quite infamous to some degree. But yeah, like this is a long sequence, but I always find that I enjoy the sequence. Yes, it starts slow, but once it gets going and you're like, oh, this is actually a really cool sequence. Because when's the last time there was a Bond boat chase scene? Was it From Russia with Love before this? And that's kind of a limited sort of, like, it's not as intense as this one. Like this one's quite a bit more of a full on, yeah, we're chasing them down kind of thing.
Yeah, it might have been.
I don't think there wasn't really the one in Thunderball other than when they're on the boat.
Yeah, no, not really.
Nothing else is striking me from a boat chase scene, but I thought I like the boat chase scene. I think it's.
I don't hate it. It's just it feels a little long.
Yeah,
but it's
long,
partially because the first half of it's interspliced a lot more with good old JW.
Yeah, it is, but it breaks up parts of the film, right? Like I like that it's sort of this almost like an interlude, right? Like you get this.
Yeah, that's
this break in between what's happened up to that point, and then you get this scene, and then it does kind of, once this scene is over, it kind of speeds the film along a little bit. Like it kind of picks up the pace, and you kind of get to that end point a little bit quickly. But I've always enjoyed the boat chase scene.
I think this is coming shortly after that airplane.
Oh yeah, airplane
Right?
chase scene too.
Right.
They literally found the only thing they didn't have a skateboard chase scene.
Oh, shame. There's
We'll get to that. We'll get to the snowboard chase scene, right?
no Beach Boys to be played.
No. Yeah, thankfully they didn't put some goofy music or something in. This is played pretty straight for the most.
Live and Let Die is the goofy music that gets played.
Yeah, as close as, but yeah. And the only time now that I think about it, there was a scene late in the movie where they used a Live and Let Die theme when he's cutting him to put them into the shark pond or whatever.
Right.
And that's like, okay, this kind of fits here, not too bad, but the rest of them, like, it just doesn't fit. But
outside one of the one where the I liked where the right before the whole latex tearing mask thing scene,
okay,
where the singer is doing that, where she's singing the song.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like that works fine there.
Yeah,
and stuff. But yeah, a lot of times it's too punctured. It's just like, please stop.
Yeah. And I think it also, with the rest of the music, there's a lot of music that plays into that sort of Harlem beat kind of thing, right? Like so it doesn't really fit with that part of the soundtrack. Like they're complete opposite ends of the spectrum from a music standpoint. So I think that really breaks it from being, because there's a lot of the tracks where they're in the alley in Harlem and stuff, and it's like, this is like got a really cool groove and stuff to it, and then you get this sort of cross rock opera, or not really opera, but like classical music song that just doesn't really vibe with that other music.
It's certainly a mishmash.
But yeah, I guess just from a plot standpoint as well, I like the San Monique scenes because it's so different than the New Orleans and the Harlem and stuff. It's so different than a lot of the Bond stuff.
Right. Instead of, you don't really get as much of the very like high class look. You get a lot more of the more average kind of
Bond stayed at the 2-star hotel instead of 5.
on the ground level of things, which, you know, especially when they're going through like that the bus chase scene, you see a little bit more of the villages and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you know you have Harlem and New Orleans doesn't really count.
I mean, it's utilized, but not to a strong degree.
Right. It's just sort of, you have like about 60 foot of road in an intersection.
I do like the just totally out of place. The music band is coming through.
The jazz funeral.
Yeah, like that's really a neat addition to the film, and I mean it happens twice.
Well, as I say, they were
such a I like
they were going to, they couldn't do Mardi Gras because they'd just done Junkaroo.
Okay.
And so they're like, what's something else that's different? And then that's when jazz funerals were mentioned. It's like, oh, that'd be really cool to put into the film somehow. And in some way, people will see that as being exploitative of, here's something that goes on, and they're like, oh, we're going to use this in the film and stuff. But in especially back in the 70s and stuff, that's going to be the only way that somebody's going to even know that sort of thing exists.
Right. Yeah, I certainly didn't know about it. So
right, like that's just kind of the nature of the beast of it, and it's just like, oh, cool, never even knew, heard, or anything about it. Sure, and I think that problem still exists because of the infinite, mind-rendingly numbered high avenues of the internet super speedway that we all go traveling down, that there's just so much information to be inundated with that you can't possibly know everything, nor can you be aware of everything. So when you do get punctured with this sort of thing coming up, you're like, oh, cool. Like I've never been to New Orleans, but I remember when my mom went when I was really young and stuff, and I've always wanted to go, and so I remember doing a little bit of reading for it and stuff as a kind of like a teenager and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it'd be really neat to see some of these things and whatnot. But that, and also one of my actually, you met him, David. Um he's from New Orleans.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's just kind of like, so yeah, it'd be cool to go and all that sort of fun. Anywho, yeah, it was cool to at least get a little bit of that flair for that, and also the San Monique aspect, as well as that, what would you call it, kind of the village.
Like when they're on the bus, you mean?
No. Like at the end, that where there's just the villagers sort of at the graveyard.
Oh, just like the ceremony or
Right.
yeah, I don't know what's the word, performance ceremony,
the sacrifices.
Sure. Yeah, I like that element. I think that's really neat because it's just again, it's so different than a lot of the other stuff we've seen in the Bond movies. And it adds that nice, just little bit of, I don't know if it's actual culture to, that region and of the world and so forth, or how much of an element it's actually used in the everyday life or what have you. But it added something to the movie. We often do get, I mean, I've brought up the cinematography in a lot of these movies, but this just added a human element to that piece rather than it just being, here's the famous mosque, here's this famous mountain, or
all these set pieces.
Yeah, this added something, and I'm sure a bunch of this was filmed on a soundstage, but it still adds something to the presentation of just not 1, 2, 3, here you go. Just
what
so
I remember, I think they were going to
so.
film in Haiti originally, but there was it was a bit going on at the time, so they kind of shifted gears.
Some kind of government issue or political issue.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of violence going on.
Okay,
so
fair enough.
But yeah, I think that's where they were originally going to film. But then they had to shift gears and go that route. But in doing so, they came across that crocodile farm.
Okay.
Like that was just something they came across. And the dude, his name is Ross Kananga. He and so they named Kananga after him.
Oh, cool.
And stuff. And he's the one that did the running across the alligator. What am I thinking? What am I stunt? Thank you. There we go. Brain came to save me. He's the one that did that stunt. He also was one that he had that sign, like the trespassers will be eaten, and that's what stopped him to be like, what is this? We have to have this in like this is ridiculous. So
they didn't just put that sign up. It's actually on that.
That was farm? on that property. Oh,
wow. That's pretty cool.
So yeah. But,
okay. Well, obviously ultimately Bond saves the day at the end of this movie. Are you okay to jump into some of the characters and stuff? Or?
Sure. Yeah.
Did you have anyone that, to you stood out? Like I could probably talk for hours on some of these characters because I truly find these henchmen and side characters to be just really awesome and just really
it's a bit more fleshed out, and not just in the baddie way. Like you get more of Felix. He's a bit more peppered in there.
Felix is the one who says I wrote down the line, get me a make on that white pimpmobile. He says.
Oh goodness. Oh goodness.
And this Felix is the same one that shows up in the Daltrey, the Roger. Wow, Timothy. I was going to say Roger Daltrey, who is the lead singer of the Who. Timothy Dalton. This is the same Felix, but there's some other Felixes that sit in between, if I remember, that play the role.
Yeah, it's kind of just like they have
weird.
Like
they bring him back,
spinning roulette to be like, let's.
But he's the same one who has the wedding in is that License to Kill? That has the wedding. I think it's License to Kill. Anyways, yeah. But yeah, you're right. Felix has a little bit more to do in this and a little more purpose. Makes sense. They're in the US. So
Right. But I actually don't mind Teehee, other than the name. The name, I get why, because he's always very like
giggling, I guess.
Giggling and stuff. So I don't mind him as a character though. Like the, he the actor purposely wanted the claw. Like he's like, I want that. Yeah, he's like,
that's
you
awesome.
know, like I want the claw. I like
that was his gimmick.
That was, he wanted that to be his gimmick.
Nice.
And while it is interesting to have that as the choice gimmick in that regard, because you're like, okay, he's missing a hand, but
well, it's not just a hand.
Well, right, but that's all you see is just him missing a hand at first. Yeah. And then he does say in that crocodile farm part, I think he says he got his arm bit off, but you don't really see it. But yeah, that, you know, claw bends a gun. Could have snipped off a finger.
Several fingers, actually.
Yeah, right.
At least two people he tries it to, but doesn't bother to follow all the way through.
Right. Yeah.
And how Bond just, that's great. Oh yeah, you just happen to have wire cutters, you know, within hand reach. Come on.
Well, and that's, I think, something as well that I don't know if it's just the direction of filming or if it's something that's just really painfully obvious in this film is, and maybe some of the other ones of Moore's, is just this. Do the baddies not see this? Like, do they not see him reaching for this? Are they just filled with so much bloodlust that they do not see the canister of gas? Just kind of swooped up into the magnet there, like, and then here he is fiddling with stuff as he's tied up. Am I blind? And I'm just, my mind's eyes projecting this, and it's really not what's going on.
Well, you're right. With Teehee, it's funny because he's choking him with the claw arm, but he's not really doing a good job of trying to get the claw necessarily any closer to him at that point. He tries to a few times earlier in that fight, which it's actually a relatively long fight for Moore's standards. Like, Moore doesn't happen to have a lot of those long one-to-one fights. I think Jaws is maybe another one, but a lot of them are not coming to mind otherwise. And this is a pretty aggressive fight, and it's just weird. Yeah, like he's reaching for this, and it doesn't help with the filming in that as he's reaching for it, you know, it's the classic movie trope of the fingers barely touching it and he can't quite reach it. It's not just like, oh, he notices and he just pulls it off. That would have been much more logical, right? If he just was able to reach it, grabbed it, and snip the wires,
right, instead of
rather than
this,
tension,
building tension.
Yeah, it's so silly that, yeah, why would that person I like it, you just, they're so full of bloodlust again.
They're just focused on that singular purpose. They are the shark.
Good to see you again, Mr. Bond.
Right. Yeah,
I see nothing but you, Mr. Bond. What's the movie's like, watching the hand, always watching the hand, or whatever. Something from something, right? But it's like watching the eyes, always watching. You know, pay no attention to what the hand is doing.
Right.
But to the point you meant about the gas canister and the magnet and stuff, I do like how it's slightly addressed with Whisper though, and he's like, look out.
Yeah, because you don't get why he is like, he had like, because the first time he's
been crushed or something,
right? He's talking it's when Bond goes down there for the first time,
right? And
to Saint-Monique, and he's whispers the
bellboy,
like, like a bellhop kind of, and he brings him champagne and he has to repeat himself,
right?
And it's like, this is really, when you're watching it first, like, what are you sick? What? You get strep throat? What's going on here? Like, it just seems off.
Humidity in the air on the island.
Well, part of that is also I think early on, and at least in some points, it feels like the audio had a little bit of an issue.
Okay.
I don't know, like maybe it was just me.
I couldn't remember.
It I always I've got it into the habit now, and maybe it's just because I'm old, of putting on the subtitles.
Okay. I purposely do that just so I can actually catch the lines in their full,
Well,
like,
it helps me focus on the movie because I am such a
Okay.
bad movie watcher, because I don't, really watch movies or TV that much. But
Mhm.
it's usually like it's it turns it from being a lot more of a passive to a bit more of an active activity, because you actually
Okay.
have to, like, from because it's hard for me to hear stuff. So
Right.
like for you to catch the lines, it's the same thing, but it's because it's just hard for me to hear things. So um but yeah, I'm kind of like, what the heck's going on? And then
Right.
he calls him Whisper. I'm like, oh, that's right.
You can only
This
whisper.
is- yeah, and it's just like,
Yeah.
okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like Whisper. He's not utilized a lot, but you get the ridiculous scene with the sofa thing imploding that he's
Oh, right. That's the that's another maniacal
yeah,
aspect of the
it's so
prankster.
weird, but it's yes, the prankster. But it kind of makes me laugh just because it's so, like, why? But it's still funny because it just
Mm.
happens for no reason really. Um, but I like that combination of like Teehee being kind of the psychotic kind of henchman, and he's kind of getting enjoyment out of harming people, and Kanaga's kind of somewhere in between that, not quite that diabolical. Like, even he lets Bond keep his fingers, right, when he could
Right,
have.
which is, yeah, had him
Yeah,
set.
like he had him at his mercy, right? And I mean, I guess you could say, oh, that's a trope, because even the final death trap is, a slowly descending, what it is, I don't know, cart or whatever that is. And
Yeah.
but at least it's, as it's happening, it's like, okay, Kananga's right there. He's just not paying attention, which is, I know, kind of silly, but he's waiting for the sharks.
He's waiting for the sharks to come in, but
But
it's
it's
in the
not just
same hand.
totally
It's like,
the, we're gonna descend you into the lava and we're gonna leave the room, and at least it's kind of
well, they
implying,
had
okay,
that
he's
with the
distracted. And
the Crocodile Island, so
yeah, they did, I
they
guess.
kind of
Yeah,
just
that's
like,
true.
oh, have fun with the Crocs.
Yeah, that's true. I do like that image of Teehee kind of, as you see him kind of like pulling away. You're like, what's going on? Oh, he's pulling there's a like
Yeah,
a,
because one of the henchmen's like pulling him back
right, he's
with
wheeling him
a
back or whatever.
yeah.
But at first you're kind of like, what's going on? Am I like, is this vertigo or something? Like, what's going on here? So, oh, okay, I got it. But I like that. But
Fun fact: that is
um
not vertigo. Is that's somebody who's had it. No, that is not vertigo.
no, but I do like that it it's still cheesy for sure. But I like how Whispers, he's trying to get the attention of Kananga, who can't hear him, gets kicked into the thing, and then obviously Kananga hears that he's not that, he's pretty dense to not notice that things are happening around him, but not to the point of where, oh, I didn't hear a rather large man fall into into a big metal, I don't, what is that, like a silo, or I don't know what that is.
Something.
It's like a giant torpedo,
It does look like it's like some sort
human-sized
of
torpedo.
missile. Yeah.
um and then we get, the fight scene at that point. But yeah, one character we haven't touched upon at all, and she's pretty, I don't know, I think she's pretty important, not just from a historical standpoint from the Bond character, I guess, but I like the Rosie character. I like that she's a double agent. I like
Yeah,
that
it's pretty, not that it's pretty subtle, but it's, I don't, and this is the thing, I'm wondering if, to me, her acting kind of comes off as stiff.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering if that is more so because she's trying to play this part of, oh, this is just my second mission. Oh, I'm actually a double agent.
Yeah,
Um,
it could be a little bit of, yeah, maybe she's a fresh actor, but then, yeah, it could be as part of the characters to be a little jittery.
mhm.
She can't keep her story straight, kind of thing. And
Right, because it does kind of step into that a bit more,
mhm.
or that it's that she's trying to think on her toes, and then Bond's kind of like, hey, you said it was up on the hill, not down there, and then she's like, up on the hill, up over on the
Yeah,
hill,
down
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 there.
here, up on the hill. Yeah. Yeah,
It's
for
like,
sure.
okay.
And then I mean, I think it's implied that they sleep together twice,
Yeah, something like that.
something like that. But this being, I seen this being a fairly big deal, right? To have, two people of different color on screen in this type of large film to make love or kiss and this kind of thing. Um, but it goes beyond that for me. I think I like the character. I like that. Yeah, she is a bit jittery, but she isn't just a typical, she kind of comes across as being really airheaded to some degree. And so she's
But
not just wasted
it,
as this like useless character. There is something a little further for that
right?
character.
Is it feigning the airheadedness
Right.
partially to, maybe that is a trait that Kanaga's like, this can be exploited.
Yeah, probably.
It's
She meets a pretty grisly end.
yeah, the coconut scarecrow got her.
Death by coconut scarecrow.
I think those things are cool though.
They're
Like
cool.
it's like, okay, yeah, this is a perfectly weird evil villain way to keep eye on your precious,
like it keeps
simple
that,
heroin smuggling.
because Kananga's thing is to keep that mystique, like Bond talks about that, right? To keep the fear in the people on the island not to go to certain areas,
right?
And this is a way to control things. And they see, well, even Rosie screams when the hat's in her room. Now, I don't know if that's her playing the part or if she actually is scared, because she does freak out a second time later on. Maybe full well knowing that if she crosses Kananga, like this is a marker saying like, you've crossed me, we're coming to kill you now.
Right.
So yeah, I like it too. And I like, again, some of these little imagery pieces of things like that, and just that instilling the dread, but on this mystique level, rather than just, you see a silver bullet, it means this particular assassin's coming to get you or something like that. It's an unknown to those that are in the know, but still it's unknown enough that it's just there to keep the fear inside them, keep them on their toes.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess trying to think that it's such the one thing, and kind of mentioned a little bit, especially on the back end, is the pacing. The pacing isn't necessarily odd in this one. It almost feels like it's like, oh, we're going to spend 10 minutes here. Oh, 10 minutes here. 10 minutes here. It feels very, I don't want to say formulaic, but very methodical, but not, and maybe like, it's not to say like good pacing, because I think at times it gets a little too choppy, or it maybe drags its feet a little bit here and there, but it's at least purposeful.
Yeah.
I'll say that. And it just feels with that Rosie character, she gets introduced and she's at least in it enough to where it's not a Strawberry Fields fiasco with that movie, because this movie had some issues filming and whatnot, and just sort of, whether it's Roger Moore getting kidney stones and going or just having troubles filming and stuff, like the that boat chase scene, they kept on crashing into a tree.
Oh jeez.
Yeah, not so good. But the, I don't know, maybe it is, as you said, that there's just good characters all around. She doesn't quite stand out as much. And that's, for better and for worse, in the sense that maybe not like, doesn't quite puncture through the canopy of like, this is like the upper threshold of it, just kind of like, just sort of gets towards it, but just doesn't get over the hump, over the hills over there.
Yeah.
So, but that's, yeah. Like, I feel the same way with Quarrel. I like Quarrel.
Quarrel Jr.
Quarrel
got
Jr.
torched.
Yeah, I know. I know.
I remember a discussion, you'd be like, no, Quarrel.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that they brought a Quarrel Jr. into this movie.
I'm okay with that. Coral Jr. is
I'm okay
fine.
with it too. It doesn't bother me. It's a very interesting idea to put that really tiny callback in there.
Mm. And and there's another character, it kind of gets a little bit of scenes here, a little bit here, but not where it was to the detriment of Skyfall, where I nearly said Skyrim there. Skyfall of being like too focused on M, where it's trying to do this back and forth with M and Bond. And what it does is it's two spotlights that are just sort of kind of shallowing out everything else. Here it's everybody's got their own light, and it's keeping everything shiny. And Quarrel Jr. Pardon, isn't isn't
R.I.P. Quarrel. Torched by mechanical dragon.
Isn't the supernova to block out everything else, but it's just a nice little side character that they're competent, and he's the one that sets the incineraries for the fields. Like, he can do business, and he does business.
He's getting a little revenge. Right, fire with fire.
Oh boy.
Well, I think we've got two. Well, one is obviously a very much a main character, and the other one, debatably, maybe still more of a side character. But what do you think of the solitary character? So I know you'd mentioned about obviously a lot of really unique wardrobe and so forth.
Like that peacock wardrobe, and stuff. I liked the concept, because this ties back into that otherworldliness of that. She does have this sort of power, and Kananga even says, like, your mother had it, and then she lost it, and was of no use to me, and you have it. I'm not going to have you lose it and be no use to me either. And it's an interesting bit between those two, and Bond's garbageness. I like he is quote unquote getting his hands dirty. I couldn't think of it. I'm sorry, that's the only thing that's coming to my head. But he's getting his hands dirty, and I get that he is doing what he's doing because he's trying to, he's got his mission. So it's kind of, he is the meat grinder, and for these different kind of women and stuff like that. And in one hand, it does come off like, if you just kind of take it at surface, you're like, that's really ridiculous that she would fall for him. But she is, for all intents and purposes, like, Taro is legit. Like, they set it out as legit.
Right.
And it isn't until Bond pulls that lover's card at that first introduction that she's kind of like, what?
Right.
That throws it all kind of sideways. So it does put that element of either it is legit because of what happens at the end, or something, and then he completely tricks her with having a whole deck of those when she pulls it to really kind of hammer that home. In one hand, it does come off as very outlandish, me just kind of retelling it like that, but like, I can at least it's a little bit more sensible than that. Like,
sure.
But I don't know, maybe that's just me.
No, I see what you mean, because she's so fixated on those results. And as far as she's aware, she hasn't been wrong in whenever the cards come up. So when he pulls the lover's card, it shocks her for a couple of reasons. Probably one, because she, as you said, she doesn't even know this man. and he's implying that they're gonna hook up or whatever you want to call it. And then he pulls the appropriate card for that to happen, and she's got all those other cards, because she early, is it just after that where she's saying a man comes, he causes destruction,
It's
he's
right
coming by
before.
plane, but then she does it again, right? She's like, he's coming now, he's coming by water,
Right.
what or whatever.
Well, that's when they meet a second time, and he has the whole
time,
deck. Yeah.
Yeah. But just like she at least seemingly, her interpretations of the cards are correct, and she's been able to read the future.
And she does even specify at one point. She's like, Kananga gets mad. He's like, hey, the hell, you said death, and right. She was lying, but right. She's kind of gives this sidestep answer of, well, you've got to be more specific,
right,
in your questioning. And so probably because the question never came up,
right,
kind of thing, until he pulls the card. But then he's pulling the card, so does it really, so there's enough muddying the water that it's, and because it has that otherworldliness to it, that it works really well, I think. Mm-hmm. Outside of her comment there at the end of, oh, hey, I feel like a woman for the first time or something. And I'm like, this is such an out of place comment. Why do you?
Yeah.
Why do you have this line?
And then Teehee sure shuts her up. Just shoves her in the foldable bed.
Yeah, instead of just why you just like snap fingers off at that point.
Well, it's funny that as soon as Bond walks out of the bathroom, he's surprised by that, but you think it would have jolted him to just automatically flinch and cut her finger. Right. I would have thought, like, if you've got scissors on a piece of paper and you walked in and you said, like, hey, I might flinch enough to at least nick the paper or something. But evidently he's got a steady hand, I guess. steady claw.
steady claw.
Yeah. As a whole, I do like the solitaire character. Yes, it's a little bit goofy that she would just fall for him based on the cards, but again, the element of, as you said, mudding the waters of, she's so attuned to the cards and believes in the cards. So yeah, because she talks about like my grandmother before her and my mother before her. I think she's seen the pattern, right? She says, okay, grandma at some point, probably same thing. A card came up and grandma fell in love or whatever, which led to mom, which led to her now. But does that imply if Kananga won and Bond was killed, that the child of Bond would be the next card reader? I guess. Just like, would that not be the case? Or in this Bond universe, okay, maybe she's had another relationship after this, but is it implied that Bond's kid is now the new card reader since mom no longer has the power? I don't know, but
maybe. Dun dun dun.
Maybe, but let's just hope that child hooks up with Baron Samedi.
Well, now here's the thing: like, he's
the last character I wanted to touch on.
He's, as you said, a side character, but he's like this weird. He's almost like a spider you see on the wall, where you're like, some people you will freak out and want to smush the spider, which psychopathic, but okay. B,
I can see it as a reasonable response if you're terrified of spiders or whatever.
Doesn't matter, psychopaths. They're spiders. They're
grabbing a spider creatures. And pulling off each individual leg is psychopath to me.
Well, I don't know. I mean, that's a little bit more. It's more methodical. That's a business decision at that point. You made a decision.
Going into business for yourself.
You've decided to invest time being crazy, but yeah, it's one of those things that's, you see it on the wall, and then if you're one of those people that wants to smush it, I'm just kind of like, oh, well, let's see if I can get depending on how big it is, see if I can get a piece of paper, throw you outside or something.
Same as me. I try to throw them outside.
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, all right, thanks, Spider Bro, have fun.
Yeah.
But and this is somebody who has been maliciously attacked by a brown recluse when they were like 3 years old. So I'm in one hand, I have reason to hate spiders. in another hand, also very much reason to hate Spider-Man because I did not get cool spider powers. But you know, you like you see it and then you go fetch something to deal with it, and then it's gone. And you're like, where to go?
Yeah.
You know,
Pops up in the next space. You don't expect it.
right. And is very, very present. He's got your attention.
Mhm.
And I get because he's obviously based off of I think how you say it's like Baron Samedi
Yeah, I think so.
is the like the actual voodoo god.
Mhm.
So like that's totally cool, and it really upsets me that they really don't revisit him ever again outside of the Aztec level in Goldeneye, and then probably in some of the other Bond games that I've not played. But it's just like just that concept. You have it. Do it again,
Yeah,
please. Like it's just I like it. I love that he's sitting at the end of that on the front of that train at the end of the
that's
movie,
cool.
and he's
Yeah.
just kind of laughing, and you're like, ooh, yeah.
So something to be, yeah, yeah, I don't know what to say, but he's so magnetic on screen. The actor does a great job of, with such a limited amount of time. I mean, how many times does he pop up? One at that
Five.
that beginning sort of, I don't know, that sort
We're
of
kind
show
of
that's going on at the
yeah.
hotel, but it's not implied that he's anything other than an actor, essentially, right? Because they're like, oh, ladies
Well,
and
no,
gentlemen,
they
Baron
introduce him
Samedi.
really. I mean, I get it's part of the act, right? But they
Mm-hmm.
introduce him really, really oddly too, because he's like, oh, um, not like immortal, but like you know, the
The man who
something.
cannot die, I think he
Yeah,
says,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, something akin to that. And he's like, man cannot die, but you know, for our purposes tonight, he is the dancer.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's that's another one of those kind of odd muddy in the water sort of thing. You're like,
Right.
okay, all right. And then um
Then we get him in the graveyard.
in the graveyard where he
But
runs
again,
in.
not really implied on who he is at that point. We as an audience have can recognize him, but I don't know if Bond really saw him when he's walking by, right? He so briskly leaves that scene.
Right,
He
and it's
sees that this is going on, this performance, but it's just kind of out of sight, out of mind at the moment.
and that, and also when he first would have seen him, he's in makeup and he's in a different attire, and
Sure.
it's also a kind of very festive
Yeah.
dance routine going on.
Yeah.
And he sees him there. He's in the um he shows up after Bond is taken to the farm where he
Yes.
could have had his fingers snipped off, where
he's pulling cards.
he pulls cards, but he's also like catching him on fire, and he's doing this kind of weird fire bit with it that
Yeah.
that sort of hints that there's something akin. He's tangentially
Mm-hmm.
got something going on with
Yeah, like he
with
can read the
the
cards, or
tarot
he
as
can
well,
anticipate them as well. Yeah.
right? Because he pulls the death card when Kanaga's like, yeah, oh, sacrifices, all that sort of stuff, and
Right.
pulls up that, and so that's what, three.
Yep.
He is referenced in the boat chase. He's not seen, but he's referenced there. I don't know if you caught it.
No.
There's a point where there's mentioned that, like, yeah, there's this guy with Kananga, a really tall guy. He had to be like 9 feet tall, had a cockamini hat and stuff. And that's in reference to him. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, it adds that other this element that he's something's not quite.
He's something more than human.
More than meets the eye. But and then I guess it was 4, because then he's there at the 5, because he's
5,
there
he's
at
the train.
at the train, and then 4th is the
he's
the
resurrected
sacrifice,
out of the ground or whatever,
right? Which is a cool little.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And obviously the mystique is broken because we see like Bond taps the headstone to go down, and it's in that other spot. But you know what's funny, when they start going down, did you notice that the ceramic legs of the samadhi still there behind them.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
There's like, because the body explodes when he shoots it the
Right.
second time, and there's just like the two legs that are left. It's
Mhm.
behind them as Bond taps the thing and they start going down. The legs
Okay.
are still there. It's kind of funny.
Nice.
But yeah, then we get the cool sequence of like the head blowing off, right? And he doesn't really flinch by that, or he just kind of like rolls his eyes up, like I guess it's implying he's dying, I guess. And then he gets shot once more and just like
It just
explodes.
explodes, right?
But then gets resurrected in the same spot.
That I thought it was a different tombstone that he pops in, but it's like the real
Maybe.
one.
I don't know. I
And
thought it was the same one. Well, no, it must be different because the legs are still there. So you're right. It must be a
right.
different one.
And then he after, and then they have that fight. Fight was too quick, but
Yeah,
it's
kind of wasted.
which is unfortunate. But
Yeah.
the he falls into that coffin of snakes.
Yeah.
And I guess Holder was terrified of snakes, but
okay.
I don't remember the princess. There was a princess who came visited the filming that they were doing on that day, and the way they phrased it was because Jeffrey Holder was the consummate gentleman. When asked to do that falling into the coffin, he much obliged with the princesses with the princess in audience.
No.
I'm like, oh no.
But the snakes weren't live when he jumped in by that point, were they?
I think they were.
Okay, because as he's rolling around,
Yeah, because
his hand kind of comes up, and it looked like it didn't look like they were live snakes anymore. But I mean, before he jumps in, they're moving around. So
right, the dancer got bit by that one.
Oh, that green snake.
Yeah. So he got bit by that one.
Okay.
And then it like once it bit him, it started crawling towards Jane during the filming, and she's like, "Oh no,
really?
oh no,
I'm out of here."
Well, she was tied up, so she couldn't move. Everybody else was freaking out.
Right. She's tied up. That's right.
And so eventually, the snake handler got it right before it got.
Oh, geez, lucky.
It's like, oh my goodness.
And maybe to some degree, it's a good thing that he's not overshown. I mean, I agree. I think the sword fight would have been nicer if they would have extended that to some length, where there was like, it would have been cool, like probably would have been too gruesome, but like if he, like, let's say he lost a limb, and then so like let's say he lost an arm, and then he kind of falls over because he lost an arm, but then another one pops up as to take the place of that one, or something like that would have been cool. But it's so fast, it's just over so quick. Because if there had been 3 of those samadhis coming out at that point, then it would have really added to that. Okay, is this just like clones, or what is this at this point? Like, what's going on here?
Very extended
really
family there.
Yeah.
Mr. Samady.
So seven twins or something.
7 twins.
7 sets of twins, sorry. And they all somehow ended up being identical. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but this is a really cool character. He's probably one of my top, I don't know if you want to call him side character, henchman, whatever you want to call him. But it's such a
forces
cool character.
Of nature.
Well, he's kind of is a force of nature. He's kind of beyond just at least it's implied, he's beyond the mortal plane kind of thing. So I personally really enjoy that character a lot, and the performance is just spot on. It's if you've never heard of that, I don't know if you call it a legend, or the whole, what would we call that? I guess more of a, I've lost the word I want.
I'm not finding it.
I don't know if it's a legend or if it's sort of a story of this character.
Oh, like it's a part of the religious aspect.
Lore, yeah, like or what have you. This is probably your first introduction to this character or this being, and so it's such a memorable image, right? Like it burns in your mind, that image of this character,
because he has like skeletons painted on, the skeleton bones painted on him. And
the only other time I've ever seen anything in any sort of media that was similar was the Papa Shango wrestler character, and that was very similar. I'll show you a picture. It's quite similar to the way that this character looks. So
okay.
And they played that there was like a this is, when wrestling had a lot more of that sort of, I don't know, they wanted you to believe, right, that these characters really were whatever they were, right?
I no idea. I'm
So in
not
the, in the
wrestling
80s and
guy.
stuff, they had a lot of these characters that would, like the Undertaker, right? They wanted you
I'll
to,
take your word for it. Like I said, I don't really know
well,
anything
they
about.
wanted
I
the
was
Undertaker
never
character to basically be like, you use unstoppable force, or you could smash him with chairs and you would just keep getting up, kind of thing.
okay.
So they had like these characters that had to fulfill this role, and so they had this Papa Shango character that would curse people in the ring, and like, whatever, blood would come out of their forehead and things like that. So they really try to have this wrestler portray that character as that, and that's the only other time I can think of personally of something that
You
portrays
saying
this
that makes
element.
me think of me catching with somebody I went to school with when we both studied in Saitama, who
Mhm.
watched like Japanese wrestling, and there was a
Okay.
dude who would quote unquote shoot lasers out of his hands. And
Okay.
yeah, I'm not, nah, no. The wrestling is not my thing. I've never. My dad. I remember my dad watching it and stuff when I was younger, because that would have been, like the Hulk Hogan,
Yeah. Well, this is around that
Road
time that this
Warrior.
character was.
What's the are they the animals, the ones that had the spikes and stuff?
Oh, the Road Warriors, and they
Ro-
were also called the Legion of Doom in
Legion of Doom.
WWF.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Macho Man and
Yeah.
the Ultimate Warrior and all that. Like that was, I remember my dad watching that sort of stuff, but I not something I cared about whatsoever. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of like okay, all right.
Papa Shango probably has one of my favorite wrestling moments, though. He sets a guy's hand on fire.
Oh
And
no.
the way the guy's, he's like screaming as his hand is on fire. It's just so funny because it's so over the top, right? It's
Uh-huh.
just, and there was another guy who's like passed out in the ring with his boots on fire. And like the theatric of it was really neat to
Uh-huh.
see that. And it's like in a live audience and stuff like that. But it was so silly, right? And actually
Mm.
he went after the Ultimate Warrior like a couple of times, and he gave him like stomach pains and stuff.
Oh.
As a little child, you see this, you're like, whoa, like this is pretty scary as a little kid.
This dude's running around casting hexes on people. Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah. So, but this is the only other sort of media representation that I'm personally familiar with that's similar to the Baron Samedi in this movie.
Um, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I mean, there's probably a bunch that I'm just
There's
completely unaware of.
probably that neither of us are. So,
Yeah, he
yeah,
cool. He
I
is cool.
yeah, it's a very unique blend of character and just enough being off screen that makes you want to see him more on screen.
Which is good that they didn't overdo it,
For
and
sure.
it is nice that they didn't just like, oh hey, let's do the Jaws thing again. Oh hey,
Yeah.
let's do, it is, as much to my chagrin, it is probably for the better that they did not go, let's have him show up again
Yeah.
to something ridiculous.
It would have been neat though if there was some just like a tiny little nudge and wink if Bond, like, so he was in Casino Royale. Where was he? He was in the Bahamas, wasn't he?
Uh-huh.
So something like he was walking by gift shop and there was the hat, or just something, just a little
Nope. He's
wink
sitting
would
at a
be cool.
table with Dionysus and they're drinking and being merry. The end.
And somebody's behind them laughing. That might be going overboard, but yeah, it is too bad. But as you said, it probably is for the best to not regurgitate a character. And but maybe it's been long enough at this point. If they were to, I don't know if they would necessarily remake. I have no idea where they're going to take this franchise at this point. It would be interesting if they just remade a few of these movies, but I don't think they ever would. But
I don't think it'd be a smart move. I mean, I could see it. I don't know if it would just be a smart move to make. But I also am not, you know, one of the broccoli family.
yeah,
So no, not really my choice.
no, see what they come up with. But I personally don't have anything else to say about this movie. There is only one last element that we've alluded to a couple of times, but I just wanted to see if you had anything else before I maybe brought that up.
No. because I don't know what you're really talking. What's this element
It's just some of these quotes that come up in
Oh,
this movie that, again, these
they're
quotes
funny.
are
I laughed.
oh, I laugh too. But these are like straight out of blaxploitation movies. So many of them, like just the tone of them, the language, the the context, like so much of it is just, you could have went into any of those movies in the 70s that had Pam Grier or whomever was, a famous actor at that point, like Richard Roundtree, right, from the Shaft movies, things like that. Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to fire off. Did you have any like specific ones that kind of you either wrote down or remember?
Well, not so much in the vein of like blaxploitation, but I like the quip that Rosie makes to Bond at first, where she's being like, I think she says like, "Oh yeah, Felix told me what to do in this situation," and he's like, "What's that?" And she's like, "Cyanide pill." When he's trying to mac on her, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a pretty good." It's just kind of.
Yeah, that was pretty decent. Doesn't he say something to her later on after she finds a torch snake, something like, "We can whip you into shape" or something like that?
We can lick you into shape.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez. Ah. And so it begins with Roger Moore.
Right. And then when Kananga
Humble
dies,
beginnings.
when Kananga dies, because he dies in he gets inflated, and then
Yes, he does.
And hits the ceiling and goes boom like a balloon. He's like, oh, he always had an inflated sense of self or something like that.
Yeah, of
Or
himself.
inflated opinion
Opinion
of
of
himself.
himself.
Yeah.
What a weird shot though too. It's so grainy, like I don't know what happens in that shot. But they
try to mask the
well, I
balloon.
think to mask it, but it's just it looks like it's filmed on a completely different like film type, and it's weird. Like, I get it that they want to mask it. Couldn't they just have turned the thing around or something? Or I don't know. It looks so out of place, that just 2 or 3 second shot of it.
Right.
Very weird. Oh, and the first thing Roger Moore says, his first first words out of his mouth is Bond, where "You wouldn't happy to be married, are you?" And again, that just goes back to that weird sort of,
but that's Bond
but it's like a non-introduction to Moore being Bond. It's just such a average line, basically. To me, it's just weird. What else? Oh, geez, there's do you remember when the cab driver, he's like, "I'll give you $20."
Oh yeah, that was pretty funny. It's like, I'll drive you
for $20. I'll take you to a Ku Klux Klan cookout
or something. Cookout. Well, I mean, $20 back then did go a lot farther than $20 nowadays. So
oh geez, $20 you probably could fill your gas tank for 6 months. Not quite that much, but and that's at the point before we realize that he's actually an agent for Kananga. He says that line before we're clued in that he's a bad guy,
which is nice that it's. And then after Bond steps out and everything, and you're like, oh,
right.
Yeah. So
Kananga's got eyes and ears all over.
Right.
And then we get that you got a honky on your tail.
Right.
Jeez. What else?
There was it's cut off halfway, but there's that adage right at the end, right before Teehee pops up again. Do you know what that full adage is?
What does he say?
So because Solitaire completely punks him at Jin, at Rummy there, and
like near the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So
he kind of inverses it, but it's like well, I guess I'm gonna find out. Unlucky at cards. But the idiom is lucky at cards, unlucky in love.
Right.
So, yeah. That was.
I think he's just reversing as like unlucky at cards,
lucky in love. Right.
Lucky in love.
Well,
I guess that's stupid.
Well, it's more the adage that it's an idiom that like I don't think I've ever really heard.
I don't know if I've heard that either, really.
Yeah, so
I'm implying it's gambling, though.
No, unlucky. Unlucky at cards, but It just means that somebody who's not good at winning cards will have happy love affairs, but if they're good at winning cards, they don't have happy love affairs. So
money can't buy me love.
Can't buy me love.
I forget where this one came up, but I wrote it down. Do you remember the part where he says it's one of the guys that's chasing Bond? And this is, I assume this is supposed to be a racist comment because he's like, can't miss him. It's like following a cue ball. Now, I've always known cue ball to mean like bald headed person or whatever.
I think it just means,
I think he's the white ball. So, so I assume what he was implying there. Oh yeah, at one point that one guy's like, it's this stupid mother that tailed you. It's like, oh, we just
they
broke a barrier there with
language. They say that a couple times where they cut it off. Stupid mother.
Yeah.
I mean, the one that really sticks out to me is the elderly lady that they cut to during the plane thing. Like,
and the one flying the plane?
Yeah, holy shit. And then it cuts away, and you're just like,
whoa,
what? What's
pushing
so
the
out
boundaries.
of place?
Yeah. Keep your hands up, honky was another one. And the CIA said something about whiteface in Harlem. I don't remember where that came up either. But
that was right after, like, right when the Strutter
when he escaped. Yeah, so
helped him.
Escape. Yeah.
It's like, you're really smart move to just come waltzing down here in Harlem.
Right. Yeah, and then of course they wrote that names are for tombstones, baby. It's like, take this hunky out back and waste him. And doesn't Bond say something really silly like waste him?
He's like,
what does that mean or something? That doesn't sound pleasant or something.
Right.
Yeah, there's just some funny, and even like when he walks into the bars that they're doing all the drug trading or whatever.
Right.
All right, and he just like the whole bar stops and watches him walk in, and then they walks in with Felix. Yeah, it's just kind of it's very interesting that element is in this movie, and I don't think you would ever be able to do that this way again. Or necessarily want to do it that way this again.
Yeah, in one hand, it doesn't come off as nearly as offensive as it could have been. It could have been a whole lot worse,
I'm sure. Yeah.
But they they kept it from getting ridiculous. Unfortunately, I think if try to do something like that now, people thinking that they're being avant-garde or edgy are probably going to push it and be like, oh, okay, all right.
What's interesting though is I don't remember Bond saying any of these quotes either. He doesn't, as far as I recall, he doesn't say anything that's kind of on that edge or borderline of pushing on a racial term of any kind.
Well, and that's
a lot because of this is happening to him more
well, that's gonna say, and it makes sense because it's more of like a lot of
fish out of water.
A lot of Brits are always like, what the
it's
kind of fish out of water. What are you guys doing? This is
right.
So
yeah, for sure. So maybe that kind of also takes a bit of the edge off of it, right? I guess if Bond were saying a bunch of these things, maybe the way the light shed on this movie might look a little different too. But as I said, as far as I recall, I don't remember him saying anything of questionable nature,
other than his quips.
Well, those are peppered throughout, so nothing on a racial scale or anything, right? Just more, because even with Rosie, right? Nothing. That's not at all part of their conversation, not whatsoever. Right. It's just strictly the plot and the business at hand, which is good. It's great. It's treating these as characters and nothing more.
Not caricatures.
Yes, nothing more. Right. So I think that was a smart move. Okay, sure. Well, did you want to jump into the ratings for this flick?
Certainly. Do you want to start us, or do you want me to give the go?
I can't remember if I think I think I went first last time. I could be wrong, but
I
I'd
think,
like
yeah,
to hear your thoughts. I think
pivoted
you
to
kind of know
you.
where I'm probably leaning already. So
So I might not might, but I'd probably be a little bit lower on this than you. Not that it's bad, because this is a good movie. I guess my qualms with it starts with the pacing, particularly towards the end, and with the music, because music is a really big thing to me.
Mhm.
And I know that's such a shallow.
No, I don't
such
think
a,
so.
well, I mean, I don't know. It's shallow that it'd be like a very pointed part of it, but I honestly I'd put it about a 5.5, but I could really see
Nice.
somebody really being like, oh yeah, totally like up there in the upper echelons. Um, the pacing is a little off.
Mhm.
Like I don't mind having this be a lot more of a grounded look at very different areas instead of, oh, this is the really nice white sands of yada yada yada, and oh, there's this beautiful crystal blue part of the ocean and all this sort of stuff. Isn't this really nice? No, this is a little bit more like doing the dirty work of the simple heroin smuggling scheme and trying to figure that all out and stuff. But like the pay outside of like the pacing and stuff, the characters are mostly enjoyable. Like
Mhm.
Rosie's the only one that kind of really is odd to me, but I think I can at least reason to why she comes off as odd.
Mhm.
And people aren't really stepping on each other's toes to either get on screen or to get off screen. So
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, you're right in the range actually where I would sit this, and I was contemplating even being a bit lower than where I wanted to go, but I want to strike around that 5.5 to 6. But I think I'll give this a 6. I know this might be a stretch for some people, and there's probably some rose-colored glasses for myself and this, and I don't neglect the fact that there's elements of this movie that could be better, like in
Mhm.
anything that you experience. But I really enjoy the silliness of the movie. Aside from the live and let die theme being played through it, I actually really enjoy a lot of the music. Like I said, some of the I like the song that's playing when Samadhi's introduced, like that sort of, I don't know, it's kind of this like calypso type music or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
I like the music in the Harlem scenes that really sort of funk. Like I've always had kind of an affinity to, like the Motown and that transition into the 70s funk era and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I really like that sound. So, and I really love the characters for the most part. Like there's a lot of memorable characters, and it's probably my favorite batch. I mean, maybe as we go along and we get to a few more movies, there might be another set of villains that I enjoy more, but as a collective whole, I really enjoy this set of villains. And for me, Kananga is one of the stronger Bond villains, like not only just in his his plot scheming, but just I just really enjoy the actor. I think he really got into the role, and he's so eloquent in his speech and believable.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I think I'll sit at a 6.
Okay.
Probably the highest scores I think we've given, as far
I
as I
think
could
so so
think
far.
at this point. So
Maybe.
maybe, but
I
and
think we
and
lost one that might have had higher, but
yeah, it's possible. But it's funny to think because Roger Moore, I think going into this, I think we both kind of had a little bit of consensus, not necessarily the strongest films on the whole. So
yeah, but like I said at the beginning of this, a younger, more certainly works.
mhm.
So, you know, maybe it's just I'm jaded from, and which I say that, but I know the movie that follows this is not not so enjoyable. It is, but um,
Oh, there's
yeah,
going to be a repeat watching of it, so we will.
can't wait.
I'm not going to lie, I contemplated jumping straight into that next.
I would have reached through this microphone and had some very strong words for you. I would have
You
been
would have
mad. I would have been mad.
names over tombstones, baby. No, but I'm not going to jump into that one. I was just like, I don't know if I wanted to just get us on the track of a gauntlet of
All aboard the Moore train.
of Meyer. No, I think I'm gonna. I've got 3 in mind that
Oh
I really
goodness.
like to get to, but I'm going to jump to one that I have basically no recollection of other than the ending of the movie.
Now you
And
just spoiled
so,
it for yourself.
well, yes and no.
Uh,
It's a movie we recently talked about actually too, and we were kind of scratching our heads as to why this movie was so successful. I don't know if that gives you a hint at what it might be.
I'm going to go with, because I don't have any memories of this one, honestly. Octopussy.
This is an octopus.
Oh, you horrible man. You.
But the
Oh.
reason being because, okay, like yourself, I don't remember this movie. I remember the airplane thing near the end, and that's it. So I'm like, okay, what
Oh,
happens
wasn't
in this
that?
movie?
Oh, that's right. It's
Right? The
that.
henchman is the man with the turban. I can't remember the character's name or anything.
Oh.
It's a total like it's totally been scraped from memory that I'm like, okay, I have to find out what this movie's about.
Oh boy.
For Your Eyes Only is also like that for me. I'm like, I for the
Yeah,
life of me, I
that's
can't remember For Your Eyes Only. So, but I was like, okay, we kind of started talking about Octopussy the other. There was another movie I really was considering, but I want to
well, you
try
don't, yeah.
Octopussy.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
We have to get through these at some point.
Well, I was hoping to buffer it with maybe
Nope,
something else. Oh boy.
nope. And
Okay.
I hope once it's your turn to pick the next one, you just keep it going.
Oh, absolutely not. I will. I will.
Break
I
the
will
chain.
buck. I will buck that trend real quick.
Fair enough. But
I will. I
Octopussy
will do
is
what I do most scientifically, which is open it up, scroll through a few of them, flip through a few of the little flaps or whatever for the Blu-ray discs, and then be like, "Oh, this one, it speaks to me."
well, Octopussy is going to speak to you.
Yes, yes, it will.
But yes,
Okay.
that's our next voyage.
All right. Can't wait. Anywho, thanks for listening. And yeah, that's it for us. Any last words?
No, if you haven't seen Live and Let Die, it's a great first Roger Moore entry into the series. And he said, I really enjoy the movie. Maybe not for everyone, but I just it's got all these random elements that all kind of come together. So
Mm,
I think it's a good one to jump into.
agreed. So yeah. Well, with that said, thanks for listening, and we will return.